In a forgotten village kissed by salt and silence, a reclusive fisherman lives by the rhythm of the tides, his past buried as deep as the sea he sails. But everything changes the night a storm delivers more than wind and rain. From the raging waves he pulls a drenched, unconscious woman with no name, no memory, and eyes full of terror. She says nothing until he finds her soaked ID card. Eleanor Whitmore, billionaire tech mogul, reported dead 9 days ago. What begins as a rescue spirals into a deadly game of secrets and survival. Eleanor isn't running from the ocean. She's running from the people who pushed her into it. As killers close in and the media paints a lie, the quiet fisherman and the hunted billionaire are forced into a dangerous alliance. Together, they uncover a global conspiracy buried in code, betrayal, and blood, one that could tip the world toward war. But can a man who ran from everything find the strength to fight? And will she reclaim a life that nearly drowned? The sea was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that makes a man listen harder, just to be sure the world hasn't ended. Theo Raines liked it that way. Out on the water before sunrise, with only the creak of his boat and the slosh of waves beneath the hull, he found the silence soothing, predictable, honest. His hands, calloused and steady, gripped the worn oar as he steered the dinghy toward his favored cove. The gulls hadn't started their screaming yet, and the village still slept. Only the ocean moved, shifting with secrets it had no intention of sharing. Theo cast his net with the practiced ease of a man who had done this 1,000 times. Fish didn't care who you were or what you'd done. They didn't ask questions. They just swam and shimmered and died. It was simple, and for that he was grateful. He'd lived this way for 6 years. No visitors, no phone, no distractions, just the sea, the fish, and the memories he tried not to dredge up. But that morning something was different. It started with a sound, a faint thunk against the hull, barely audible over the shifting waves. At first, Theo thought it was driftwood. Then the sound came again. He turned slowly, squinting into the mist that clung to the water like a ghost. There, half submerged and swaying with the tide, was a figure. For a second, Theo didn't move. It was the sort of thing your brain refuses to accept right away. A person in the water this far out wasn't common, and rarely a good sign. He scanned the horizon. No other boats, no wreckage. Just the endless gray of sea and sky. The figure didn't stir. Theo grabbed his hook pole and maneuvered the boat closer. The body was face down, tangled in what looked like the remains of a life vest. Dark hair floated like seaweed around the pale oval of a face. Female, he thought. Young. He could see the curve of her shoulder, the way her fingers drifted limply with the current. He reached out with the hook, snagging the vest's strap and dragging the body closer with slow, careful movements. When she bumped against the boat's side, he dropped to his knees and hoisted her in. She was heavier than he expected, her clothes waterlogged and her limbs stiff with cold. Her lips were blue, her skin too pale, no breath, no motion. Theo bent over her, listening. Still nothing. With a grim expression, he tilted her head back and began CPR, counting compressions under his breath. 1, 2, 3. On the second breath, she jerked violently, coughing up a stream of seawater that splattered across his coat. Her eyes flew open, wild and unfocused. "Easy," Theo said, holding her steady. "You're safe. You're on a boat. Can you hear me?" She blinked, then gasped, shoving herself away from him. Her body convulsed again, another cough, another desperate gulp of air. Her eyes darted around the boat, then to the horizon, like she expected someone, or something, to come after her. Where am I?" she croaked. Theo offered her a canteen of fresh water. "Off the coast, couple miles out. You fell in?" She didn't answer, just stared at the sky as if trying to piece it together. Her gaze was sharp, calculating, but her voice, when it came again, was soft, fragile. "I don't remember." Theo studied her. The woman was no ordinary drifter. Her jacket was high-end marine grade, the kind worn by private yacht owners. Her boots were leather. Her fingers bore the faint impressions where rings had been. Expensive ones, he guessed. Whoever she was, she didn't belong out here. He handed her a blanket from the supply bin. "You're lucky I found you," he muttered. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. "So am I," she whispered, as if the realization only just struck her. Theo turned the boat around and headed back toward shore, glancing at her every few seconds. Something about the way she held herself didn't sit right. Not fear exactly, something deeper, wariness, like she was waiting for danger to catch up. As the coastline emerged through the fog, Theo knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a rescue. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous. The wind came without warning. One moment the sky was smeared in dull gray. The next, it was cracking open with a roar. Theo had been watching the horizon, a long-standing habit born from years of solitude. Something about that morning felt wrong, the air too still, the birds gone silent. The woman had drifted to sleep, wrapped in an old wool blanket on the cabin floor. Every so often she would mutter in her sleep, short phrases that sounded like commands. Sometimes she clenched her fists. Theo didn't ask questions. Not yet. By mid-morning the storm broke. Rain slammed against the windows of the cabin like fists trying to get in. Thunder rolled in deep, guttural groans, shaking the paneled walls. Theo stoked the small stove, adding driftwood with practiced hands. The woman stirred. "You all right?" he asked, not expecting an answer. She sat up, eyes glassy with fever. Where's the yacht?" He paused. "You were alone when I found you." "No," she said slowly, shaking her head. "There were others. We were... I don't know. I think something went wrong." Theo handed her tea. "Everything's wrong when you're in the middle of the sea." She took the mug but didn't drink. "What day is it?" "Tuesday." Her grip tightened. "I've been missing for days." Theo had seen death before. It always looked the same. Stillness. That eerie quiet just after the last breath escapes. He saw it in her too when he first pulled her from the water. It was a miracle she'd lived. And now, every time she coughed or shivered, he was reminded just how close she had come to slipping away. He busied himself with routine, chopping wood, checking nets, watching the water for signs of change. But inside, he was alert, guarded. The woman was calm now, but he knew the kind of fear that ran beneath silence, the kind that waits to surface. She joined him on the porch that evening, swaddled in a dry sweater and mismatched boots. She leaned against the railing, staring at the water as though she expected it to speak back. "Name's Theo," he said after a long pause. She looked over, a faint smile on her lips. "Elle." Short, unconvincing. "Where are you from, Elle?" She hesitated. "I lived in San Francisco." What were you doing out here? Another pause, then, I don't remember. A lie. He could feel it. The sea was quiet again, but a different kind. Not peaceful, expectant. Something was coming. The next morning, Theo found her outside, rinsing salt from her face at the pump. She looked stronger, clearer, but something about the way she moved reminded him of a hunted thing, graceful but always ready to bolt. She noticed him watching. "You think I'm lying," she said flatly. "I think you're scared." She didn't deny it. "Wouldn't you be?" He nodded once, then walked into the cabin. Inside, he pulled her coat from the hook and felt along the seams. His fingers found a thin, hard edge. Plastic, a hidden ID card. He stared at the name. Eleanor Whitmore. He didn't know much about the tech world, but even he recognized the name. Billionaire. Founder of Whitmore Systems. Rumors of blackmail. A missing yacht. A media storm. Everyone assumed she was dead. When he stepped outside again, she was waiting. "You found it, didn't you?" Theo didn't answer. He held up the ID. "You want to explain this?" Eleanor's face fell. The pretense dropped. For the first time since she arrived, her eyes matched the fear in her voice. "You can't tell anyone," she whispered. "They'll find me, and if they do, I won't survive it this time." The cabin had always been Theo's refuge. 2 rooms, a cast-iron stove, and a view of the ocean that most would kill for. But now it felt like a bunker, a place to hide, not to live. Eleanor paced the narrow kitchen, chewing at the edge of her thumbnail, while Theo sat at the table watching her, like one might watch a wounded animal. "You haven't told me what happened," he said. Eleanor stopped pacing. "And you haven't told me why you live out here like the world ended." Theo didn't flinch. He respected her defloration. It was sharp, calculated, and not at all panicked. She was used to control, to be in command. Whatever had happened to her, losing that power clearly terrified her more than death. "I need to stay off the grid," she said after a moment. "Just for a few days, that's all I'm asking. There's a landline at the post office. No one's going to trace a call there." "No calls," she snapped. "They'll be listening." Theo raised an eyebrow. "They?" Her jaw clenched. "Look, I know how this sounds, but people think I'm dead, and I need it to stay that way. At least until I figure out who wanted me gone." The villagers didn't ask many questions. That's why Theo had chosen this place. But when he walked into the general store for supplies that afternoon, old Marcy behind the counter was practically vibrating with curiosity. "New guest?" she asked, eyes twinkling. Theo grunted. "Friend of the family." She smiled like she knew it was a lie but didn't press. That was the unspoken code around here. Don't ask, don't meddle. Back at the cabin, Eleanor had found some of his old clothes to wear. They didn't fit well, but they made her look less like someone who had dropped off a luxury yacht and more like someone who had drifted in from the sea. She helped chop vegetables for dinner, her movements stiff but competent. "I'm not used to this," she admitted, slicing carrots with a slight frown. "What, knives?" Theo teased. "Normal, quiet." She looked around. "I haven't had silence like this since I was a kid. You get used to the buzz, phones, emails, noise." "You think better without it," Theo said. She paused. "That's what I'm afraid of." There was something in her voice, an undertone of regret, maybe, or fear. Theo didn't push. He'd learned that people only reveal the truth when they're ready to carry it. It was nearly midnight when Theo noticed something odd in the lining of Eleanor's coat. She'd draped it over the back of a chair to dry, and a seam near the collar had come loose. He was folding it when a thin piece of laminate slid out and fluttered to the floor. He bent to pick it up. It wasn't an ID this time, it was a photograph. Eleanor standing on the deck of a massive yacht, surrounded by 6 people, 4 men, 2 women. One of the men had his hand on her shoulder. They all looked wealthy, powerful, the kind of people who made things happen with a phone call. Eleanor walked in just as he was studying it. Her face was drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "Fell out of your coat." She snatched it from his hands, staring at it like it might burn her. Then slowly she sat down at the table. "They were all on the boat," she said. "Every one of them. We were headed to Catalina for a private meeting, shareholder thing, off the record. And I woke up in the water. No boat, no people, just the ocean." Theo leaned forward. "Do you think they're dead?" She didn't answer, only said, "I think I was supposed to be." Eleanor's hands trembled as she folded the photo and tucked it deep into the pocket of her borrowed jacket. Theo stood at the cabin door, watching her. The silence between them felt brittle, like glass stretched too thin. "I need to leave," she said suddenly. "Where?" "I don't know, but I can't stay here. If they find me—" She trailed off. Her body was rigid, coiled like a spring. Flight was her instinct. Theo could see it in her eyes, the way she glanced toward the door, the shoreline, the road that led to anywhere but here. "You won't last a day out there on your own," he said. She bristled. "I survived the sea." "You survived being lucky." She sat down heavily on the bench near the window, the strength momentarily gone from her limbs. "I keep seeing it," she murmured. "The water, their faces. I don't remember everything, but I know I didn't fall. Someone pushed me." "Why?" She looked up at him. "Because I refused to sign." Theo narrowed his eyes. "Sign what?" "A merger. One that would turn my company into a weapon. I didn't trust them. I told the board I was walking away, and then someone made sure I disappeared." That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. Memories came in flashes. Champagne glasses, raised voices, waves crashing against the hull. She remembered the sky, full of stars, and Vincent's voice saying something about getting things done. She found Theo outside on the steps, smoking a hand-rolled cigarette. "You don't strike me as the type to rescue drowning billionaires," she said softly. He didn't smile. "I don't make a habit of it." She sat beside him. "You ever have to run?" He exhaled smoke into the night. "Once. From myself." Eleanor let that hang in the air. "I built an empire out of nothing, sold code to governments, corporations, anyone with the checkbook. We designed Vantage to predict market volatility, but the military wanted more. They saw potential for something else, threat detection, counterintelligence, AI with teeth." She turned to him. "They said if I didn't agree to the transition, the board would force me out. I called for an emergency meeting on the yacht to appeal to my allies." Theo said nothing. Eleanor's voice dropped. By sunrise, the only thing left was water. He looked at her then. "You need proof." She nodded. "There's a failsafe server offshore. If I can get to it, I can show the world." The next morning, Eleanor found Theo kneeling at a small headstone behind the cabin, nestled beneath a bent cedar tree. She paused a few feet away, unsure if she should approach. "Your daughter," she asked gently. He nodded. Lena, 6 years old. I'm sorry. Theo stood slowly. Car accident. My fault. I was supposed to pick her up. Got drunk instead. The words hit like lead. Not self-pity, just truth, raw and unflinching. I was in the Navy before that, he added. Special ops. Did things I'm not proud of. After Lena. I quit. Moved here. Figured if I stayed away from people, I couldn't hurt anyone else. Eleanor stepped closer. But you didn't stay away. You saved me. He shrugged. Didn't feel like a choice. She studied him. You're the only person who's helped me without asking for something. I'm not helping you, he said quietly. Not yet. I'm just not letting you drown twice. They walked back to the cabin together, a new silence between them, heavier but not empty. Inside, Theo pulled out an old trunk, maps, equipment, a weather radio. If you're going to that server, you'll need a guide. Eleanor met his gaze. And if they find us first? He shut the trunk. Then we fight. Theo's cabin had always been invisible to the rest of the world, tucked away behind a ridge of wind-bent trees and jagged coastline, out of sight and memory. But now, as the morning sun broke across the surf, even Theo felt the air change, like the land itself had started holding its breath. Down in the village, someone had arrived. Marcy's voice came through the old radio scanner first, choppy and strained. There's a black SUV out front, military tinted, not local, asking questions. Theo set the receiver down carefully, as if afraid it might explode. Eleanor stood behind him, silent, listening. How did they find us? She asked. Theo grabbed a battered field pack from beneath the table. Could be dumb luck. Could be the photo. Could be someone watching from the day you washed up. He didn't need to explain the last possibility. Eleanor's face had already gone pale. They moved fast. Theo handed her a change of clothes. Loose fisherman gear, a cap, and glasses. If anyone sees you, they'll think you're one of the crab haulers from down the coast. And you? I'm the same ghost I've always been. Outside, the wind was picking up, stirring the surf into a warning. They took the back trail, a deer path barely wide enough for 2 boots. It led up a ridge and dropped into an old ravine, overgrown and damp, ending at a half-rotted fishing shack Theo hadn't used in years. I kept this place off the books, he said. Used it back when the Navy still thought I owed them favors. Eleanor stepped inside. Dust coated everything. Nets hung like cobwebs. The air smelled of salt and secrets. Comforting, she said. Theo cracked a smile. Cozy's not really my style. He pulled out a set of binoculars and scanned the coast. Sure enough, the SUV was parked at the edge of the village. 2 men stepped out. Clean suits, mirrored glasses, short haircuts. Private security, Theo muttered. Not cops, not feds, hired hands. Vincent's people, Eleanor said, voice tight. They're looking for a body. If they find out I'm alive. They won't, Theo cut in. Not here. But even as he said it, something twisted in his gut. This wasn't a coincidence. They were narrowing in too fast. Someone had tipped them off. Someone close. Back in the cabin, the security men knocked on Marcy's door, showing badges that didn't belong to any known agency. Marcy, bless her blunt honesty, told them exactly what they wanted to hear. Nope, no visitors, she said. Unless you count Theo Raines, but he doesn't count. I live alone, always has. They pressed her, asked about strangers. mentioned a possible fugitive woman spotted in the area. Marcy narrowed her eyes. "Well," she said, "I saw someone in town yesterday who didn't look local, but that was just a seagull in a trash bin." The agents didn't smile. But they left, for now. Up in the shack, Eleanor sat near the broken fireplace, staring at a faded photo nailed to the wall. It showed a younger Theo with a child on his shoulders, both laughing under the sun. "She looks like you," she said. Theo didn't answer. Eleanor turned to him. "Why are you helping me?" He shrugged. "Because I know what it's like to have your life taken from you." She leaned back against the wooden wall. "They won't stop, you know. If Vincent sent those men, there would be more. Faster, smarter. I'm not a missing person to them. I'm a loose end." Theo looked out over the coastline, his jaw tight. "Then it's time we stop running." They waited until sunset, when the SUV was gone and the road was empty again. Then they returned to the cabin. Everything was as they'd left it, except for the door, which now hung open by one hinge. Theo drew his knife. Eleanor stayed behind him. Inside, the place was torn apart. Drawers ripped open, maps missing, stove cold. The photograph of Eleanor and the yacht crew, gone. But scrawled across the wall in thick black marker was a message neither of them expected. "You were never meant to survive." Eleanor stepped back, shaking. "They know I'm alive." Theo looked at the writing again, then out at the sea, as if it might tell him what to do next. "No," he said quietly. "They think you're running scared." He turned to her, eyes hard. "Let's prove them wrong." They moved back into the cabin as night fell, broken door tied shut with Theo's old netting. Eleanor sat cross-legged on the floor, an old, scorched notebook in her lap. The edges were crisped and black, pages fused together like a fossilized memory. Theo watched her silently. He recognized the look in her eyes, an internal war between what to destroy and what to remember. "I kept this on the yacht," she said, prying it open gently. "I recorded everything about the board, meetings, backroom deals, encrypted keys, safe house accounts." She turned a few brittle pages. "Most of it's gone now." "Then we salvage what we can." She nodded. "There's a backup. I wrote the coordinates on the back inside cover." Her fingers found the edge of the leather. When she peeled it back, a charred corner revealed smudged handwriting, numbers just legible enough to read. Theo copied them onto a fresh piece of paper. "You remember what they're for?" "Offshore backup server. Vincent doesn't know it exists. I made sure of that." "Do you trust your memory?" "I built this whole system because I didn't trust anyone else. Trusting my memory is the least of my problems." Theo folded the coordinates. "Then that's where we go." But before they could leave, Eleanor grabbed the notebook and carried it outside. She walked to the fire pit, dropped it in, and lit a match. Theo didn't stop her. The flames flickered, dancing across the final pieces of a life she was no longer trying to return to. "They'd kill to get this," she said. "And if they find it here, I want it to be ashes." As the last page curled into cinders, the ocean hissed in the distance like it approved. Inside, Theo packed 2 bags, just the essentials: rations, compass, water, the encrypted flash drive he'd hidden years ago for just in case. It was dusty, forgotten, and suddenly relevant again. They wouldn't use phones, no GPS, just hand-drawn maps and Eleanor's fading coordinates. Before they left, Eleanor looked around the cabin one last time. "This place saved me," she whispered. Theo handed her the bag. "Then let's make it worth something." The boat creaked against the dock as Theo and Eleanor pushed off under a moonless sky. Theo's old trawler wasn't fast, but it was quiet, and it knew these waters better than any satellite. Eleanor sat near the stern, arms wrapped around herself, eyes fixed on the horizon. "What if the backup's gone?" she asked. "It won't be." "But what if Vincent already found it? What if we're too late?" Theo glanced back. "Then we figure it out, one step at a time." They didn't speak again for hours. The ocean swallowed sound as completely as it did light. Just after midnight, Theo cut the engine and coasted into a quiet inlet, a place he'd used before when things needed hiding. Eleanor scanned the shoreline. "Are you sure this is safe?" But it's better than being out in the open." They dropped anchor and tied the boat to a low pier. Trees rose on both sides like sentries. The wind was unnaturally still. Theo handed her the flashlight. "Stay close, don't speak." They walked along the trail, narrow and steep. A half-mile in, a rusted fence emerged from the shadows, twisted barbed wire and a sign that once read, "No entry," but now only said, "Try." Inside the compound's ruins, a small hatch lay beneath a slab of rotting wood. Theo lifted it, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling into darkness. "Welcome to the dead drop," he said. The air grew colder as they descended. At the bottom, an old shipping container sat buried into the earth, converted into a makeshift bunker. Power still ran from a solar bank rigged above ground. Theo flipped a switch. Dim lights flickered to life. Eleanor hurried to the center table where a waterproof lockbox waited. Inside, just as she remembered, was a portable server no larger than a shoebox, sealed in titanium. She breathed out. "Still here." Theo helped her connect it to the interface. A blinking light turned green. The files began decrypting: logs, board votes, hidden surveillance videos, the core code of Vantage. Then the light flickered. Theo's head snapped up. "Did you hear that?" A faint splash. They ran outside. Down at the boat, a dark shape climbed over the edge, low and slow, silent as sea foam. "A diver," Eleanor gasped. "They found us." Theo raised his weapon. "Get back in the bunker, now." But the figure didn't attack. Instead, it dropped something onto the deck, a small metal case, and vanished back into the water, slipping beneath the surface like it had never existed. Theo opened the case. Inside was a note. "This is your only warning. Walk away." He turned to Eleanor, whose eyes were wide with terror and fury. "They know where we're going," she whispered. Theo nodded grimly. "Then we better get there first." The portable server still hummed with activity, decrypting files layer by layer. Theo and Eleanor huddled near the entrance of the bunker, their nerves frayed from the diver's warning. Every wave outside felt like it carried another threat. The burner phone Eleanor had packed from the yacht, a relic she'd almost tossed, vibrated in her pocket. One missed call, unknown number. Her heart froze. She pressed the redial button. 3 rings. Then a click. "Ellie," her breath caught. "Vincent, I thought you were smarter than this." She stepped away from Theo, turning her back instinctively. "You tried to kill me." "You gave me no choice," he said, tone flat. You were about to ruin everything we built. I was trying to protect it. You mean yourself, always yourself. But don't worry, we fixed that. You're dead now. The world believes it. Even your mother signed the death certificate. She staggered slightly. Why call me? To remind you, you don't have allies. You have options. One of them's walking away. Do that, and this ends. The line went dead. Theo stepped beside her. What did he say? She met his eyes, voice steady. He thinks I'm alone. Theo nodded. Then let's prove him wrong. They returned to land just after dawn, docking the boat at a hidden inlet and slipping through the brush toward the main road. Eleanor's pulse thudded with each step. Her muscles ached. Her mind reeled. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a threat. Theo guided them toward a bus terminal 2 towns inland. The plan was simple. Blend in. Get to the nearest safe city. Secure an ally. Upload the evidence from a public node. But reality had shifted while they'd been at sea. At the terminal, Eleanor's image flashed across a mounted news feed. Billionaire tech executive Eleanor Whitmore declared dead. Investigation ongoing. Below it, footage from her company showed another woman, smiling, poised, addressing the press as Eleanor. What the hell? Eleanor whispered. Theo started. That's not you. Number, but she has my mannerisms, my voice. They built this. A deep chill crawled through her bones. It wasn't enough to erase her. They'd replaced her. A fabricated Eleanor to sell the merger, sign the deals, and silence the real one. We need to get to someone who will believe us, Theo said. Someone who hates Vincent as much as you do. Eleanor's mind flashed. Marla Quinn, investigative journalist. She tried to expose Vantage before the board buried her. Then let's dig her back up. Before they could make contact with Marla, Theo insisted on checking the cabin. He needed to see it with his own eyes. When they reached the bluff overlooking the shore, the smoke was still rising. Eleanor covered her mouth. Theo. The cabin was ash. Nothing remained but blackened timber and a scorched fishing boat. They climbed down the cliff path in silence. The smell of smoke clung to everything. Theo walked through the ruins slowly, like each step was a funeral rite. He knelt near the spot where the photograph of his daughter had once hung. The frame lay shattered beneath a sheet of corrugated metal. The picture was gone. Whoever came, he said, voice tight, wanted me to know this wasn't about you. They burned your life, Eleanor whispered. He looked up, fire in his eyes now. Then it's time we burn theirs. Eleanor stepped beside him. We made the call to Marla. We leak everything. Theo nodded. No more hiding. He turned to the sea one last time. His sanctuary was gone. Now it was war. Marla Quinn lived in a rundown Victorian on the edge of the city, surrounded by weeds and paranoia. Her blinds were duct-taped shut. Cameras bristled from her porch like porcupine quills. She opened the door, holding a shotgun. You brought her here, she hissed at Theo. Nice to see you too, Marla, he said dryly. Eleanor raised a hand. I'm not dead. Convince me. Inside, Marla watched the decrypted files from the backup server, eyes widening with every scroll. Jesus, they weren't just merging. They were militarizing, weaponizing Vantage with predictive strike algorithms. Eleanor nodded. They're using a deep fake of me to sign off on international deals. If we don't stop it, Vantage will become a global trigger. Marla leaned back, stunned. And you've got all this on a drive? Passwords, validation keys? Everything. Marla cracked her knuckles. Then let's blow the lid off this thing. She connected the server to her private network, preparing a full leak: codebase, boardroom footage, voice memos, the fake Eleanor's identity trail. Tomorrow, she said, midday, we will go live. But as they prepared to sleep, Theo spotted movement on Marla's exterior cameras. 2 men, suited, armed. They found us, he said. Chapter 18, A Bounty Revealed. Marla's house lights went dark. Theo, Eleanor, and Marla crouched behind an overturned couch, the laptop humming beside them. What are they doing? Eleanor whispered. Theo peered through the blinds, surrounding the property, waiting. Then his burner buzzed. A text, no number. $10 million, dead or alive, for the real Eleanor Whitmore. He passed it to Marla. Her face paled. They put a bounty on you. Eleanor took the phone. That's global darknet currency. This isn't Vincent. This is bigger. A spotlight burst through the front window. A voice called out, You have until sunrise. Surrender Eleanor Whitmore, or we burn the place down. Marla moved to her hidden cabinet. I've got a back tunnel. Leads to the river. Theo helped Eleanor grab the drive. Go, he told Marla. You leak this. We draw them away. Eleanor protested. I'm not letting you. You already died once. Now you live. Let me make that count. They embraced briefly. Then Eleanor disappeared into the dark. Theo turned back toward the door, pistol drawn. The sea may have tried to drown her. Now he would drown them in truth. They regrouped the next night in an abandoned rail yard just outside the city, far from prying eyes. Eleanor arrived alone, soaked from the river escape, clutching the drive like a lifeline. Marla was already there with someone unexpected, a hacker known only by his tag, Rook. He was young, rail-thin, with twitchy fingers, and a mind that ran faster than most computers. You brought Null Splice into this? Theo asked, incredulous. Marla shrugged. We need access to darknet distribution. Rook's the best. He doesn't care who you are. He cares what you know. Rook's eyes lit up when Eleanor handed over the drive. Whoa, this is the core code of Vantage. This thing could predict your death based on your social feed. Focus, Eleanor said. Can you expose the false Eleanor, the videos, the merger signatures, all of it? Sure, Rook said, typing furiously. But once I do, it's open season. No turning back. We're past that, Theo growled. Eleanor nodded. Do it. Rook paused. One thing. Someone from inside Null Splice reached out. Said there's a traitor in our loop. If they're real, they'll try to stop us before the upload. Theo cracked his knuckles. Let them try. As night thickened, Theo took first watch outside the makeshift war room, a gutted rail car they'd fortified with Rook's encryption net. He stood still, listening to the sounds of the city fade beneath layers of static and sirens. Eleanor found him hours later, leaning against the door, silent. You all right? She asked. He didn't answer immediately. 6 years I avoided the world. Told myself I'd done enough damage. Eleanor sat beside him. You saved me. That's not damage. I used to be someone else, he said. Before the bottle, before the guilt. They called me the cleaner. Missions no one else could finish. I was good at destroying things. She touched his arm. You're still that man, but now you're cleaning up something that matters. He looked at her then, a flicker of something deeper passing through him. I'm with you, he said, all the way. She smiled faintly. Then let's finish what we started. As Rook prepped the files for upload, Eleanor sifted through the last contents of her encrypted folder. Among the files, she found a scanned handwritten letter, her father's will. It had been redacted in the official release after his death. The unaltered version was something else entirely. To my daughter Eleanor, I made mistakes, trusted people I shouldn't have. Vantage was never meant to become what it did. Vincent took it further than I ever imagined. If you're reading this, you already know. Protect the truth. It may cost you everything, but it's the only thing worth saving. She sat there, numb, rereading the words. Theo came over quietly. You okay? I think he knew, she whispered. He saw what was coming, and he tried to stop it. He left it to you. Eleanor nodded, her resolve hardening. Then I'm finishing it for him. Inside the railcar, the server buzzed with life. Rook had managed to restore the full simulation capacity of Project Vantage and began running scenarios based on current geopolitical tensions. The results were terrifying. Holy hell, Rook muttered. This AI isn't just predicting war, it's enabling it, feeding predictive data to parties who benefit from escalation. Eleanor leaned in. Show me. He tapped a few keys. Simulations revealed coordinated patterns, false positives planted in news cycles, synthetic social unrest algorithms, predictive lobbying of defense contracts. They're not selling security, Eleanor said. They're manufacturing conflict. Rook nodded. This goes way beyond corporate malfeasance. This is global manipulation. Eleanor backed away from the screen. It's not just about my company anymore. It's about stopping what we've let technology become. Theo crossed his arms. Then we expose it all. No edits, no compromises. Marla stepped in. You sure? Once it's out there, there's no reeling it back. Eleanor looked at each of them. Yes, we release everything. 2 hours before the planned leak, Rook received an anonymous drop, an unmarked video file. He opened it cautiously. The screen lit up with a press conference. The false Eleanor, eerily perfect, was speaking at the UN Cybersecurity Summit. I'm pleased to announce the integration of Vantage into the international safety net, she said, with full oversight from global partners. Eleanor started, frozen. The doppelganger moved like her, spoke like her, even mimicked her subtle hand gestures. This isn't AI, she whispered. It's a real person, a trained body double. Rook ran a frame scan. Augmented identity, voice synthesis, micro-gesture coaching. Someone's funding this at an elite level. Theo growled. Vincent built himself a puppet. But why now? Marla asked. To rush the merger before we can stop it, Eleanor said. Rook spun toward the keyboard. Then we upload it now. No, Eleanor countered. Not here. We need a stage, one he can't shut down. Theo raised an eyebrow. You're thinking public? She nodded. The shareholders' meeting. I was declared dead. Let's give them a resurrection. As they finalized plans, Rook left briefly to set up satellite relays. When he returned, he looked rattled. "They know," he said, "our location. Someone leaked the node map." Theo's jaw tightened. "You said Null Splice had a mole." "I know. I just didn't expect it to be her." He pointed to Marla. Marla's eyes widened. "What the hell are you talking about?" "Your VPN route was compromised, cross-tracked through Vincent's servers." "That's impossible," she snapped. "I've been off their grid for years." Eleanor stepped between them. "We don't have time to argue. We secure a new route and we move. If they're coming, we need to be gone." Theo turned to Rook. "Wipe everything we don't need. Take only what will burn them." Rook nodded. Marla sat heavily. "I didn't betray you." Theo didn't respond, but the silence said everything. The storm was coming again, and this time it wasn't just the sea they had to survive. The plan required one final piece, proof from the source. The yacht, the Sovereign, now lay at the bottom of a coastal trench, its secrets drowned with it. But if the internal drive could be salvaged, it might contain raw video, biometric scans, and the original agenda Eleanor had prepared, the smoking gun. Theo volunteered. He hadn't dived in years, but he still remembered the rhythm of breath and the feel of pressure closing in. Rook secured a portable sub-drone and sonar locator. They charted the descent. Eleanor watched as Theo suited up, every buckle and strap a silent promise. "Are you sure you can handle the depth?" she asked. Theo gave a tight smile. "Drowning has never been my problem. It's what comes after." The dive was slow, controlled. Visibility faded fast. Below 80 feet, Theo found the shattered hull. The Sovereign was cracked open like a ribcage. Inside, algae drifted across luxury leather and shattered glass. He found the server compartment, ripped from its bolts, but still intact. Clipped it free. Began the ascent. Halfway up, something tugged. A net. Not a fishing net, tactical, freshly dropped. Someone else was watching the wreck. Theo cut it, kicked free, and surfaced, gasping, drive in hand. Back on land, they fled to a secure node arranged by Rook, an old consulate safehouse in Marseille. Waiting there was Katja von Brunn, an elusive data broker once on Eleanor's payroll, now independent and dangerous. Katja wore sunglasses indoors and never stopped scanning her surroundings. She shook Eleanor's hand with a quiet smirk. "Still not dead. Shame. It would have doubled your brand value." Eleanor ignored the jab. "Can you decrypt this?" Katja examined the drive Theo recovered. Military-grade casing, bio-locks, no guarantees. "You built it," Eleanor said. "You encrypted half the board's private nodes." Katja exhaled through her teeth. "True. But I also know what happens to people who dig too deep." "We've already been buried," Theo replied. Katja worked quickly, slicing through layers of digital armor. Within the hour, she unlocked it. The contents were devastating, recorded confessions, emergency messages Eleanor had sent but never delivered, proof of forged documents and video of her going overboard, and a hand shoving her just before she hit the water. Eleanor's breath caught. "That's Vincent." Katja raised an eyebrow. "Well, looks like you have your resurrection footage." Theo leaned forward. "We haven't leaked it yet. We present it. Public, controlled." Katya grinned. The bigger the screen, the harder they fall. With the server and recovered footage secured, Rook ran the latest simulation using Vantage's full predictive module, an unfiltered version never before exposed to the board. What it revealed chilled them all. "Holy, it's planning global escalations," Rook murmured. "Proxy wars, financial collapses, all modeled for corporate profit." The algorithm didn't just predict conflict, it optimized for it, choreographing unrest to benefit select entities. Target zones were ranked by media vulnerability, political instability, and even racial tension metrics. "This isn't safe," Eleanor said, stunned. "It's engineered chaos." Theo paced. "It's a weapon, and they've already pulled the trigger." Rook looked up. "There's more. Vantage predicts an event in 3 days, a staged terror incident in Brussels. It'll spark international fear, push legislation, and greenlight the merger." Eleanor's fists clenched. "They'll kill people to sell control." "Not if we stop them first," Theo said. Marla, still bruised from suspicion, spoke softly. "This leak has to hit before Brussels, otherwise Vantage becomes the new god." Eleanor turned to them all. "Then we take the truth to the one place Vincent can't silence." "The shareholders' summit," Theo finished. "We expose him on his own stage." 2 days before the summit, Eleanor, Theo, and Marla reached out to the only people capable of broadcasting Vantage's collapse in real time. Null Splice, the underground hacker collective Rook once betrayed, and now had to face again. The meeting took place in the catacombs beneath Berlin, where Null Splice operated from rotating nodes and shadow mirrors. They were masked, anonymous, and unconvinced. "Why should we trust you again, Rook?" one of them asked, voice modulated. "I brought the apocalypse in a box," he replied, sliding the decrypted drive forward, "and a chance to burn the liars behind it." The collective reviewed the data. Murmurs echoed through the tunnels, then silence. Finally, the leader spoke. "We'll broadcast live to every corner of the net. But if this goes sideways—" "It won't," Eleanor interrupted, "because I'll be on that stage. Let them see my face when the world finds out I'm alive." Theo nodded. "And if they come for her?" Rook smiled. "We've got firewalls with teeth." The collective agreed. The date was set. The files scheduled. The plan was simple. Eleanor would walk into the shareholders' summit and pull the mask off a machine built on lies, and the world would watch it fall apart. The summit was held on Ravencliff Island, a private enclave off the coast of Portugal, where the most powerful stakeholders of Whitmore Systems gathered under the illusion of security and exclusivity. Armed guards patrolled every dock, every landing pad. Drones buzzed quietly overhead. No one expected a dead woman to arrive. Eleanor and Theo approached under false credentials, smuggled in through a private helipad booked under a pseudonym. A last favor from Katya. Their path was narrow, dangerous, and irreversible. Dressed in an unassuming blazer and tinted glasses, Eleanor walked with unshakable calm. Theo, shadowing her, carried a briefcase containing the decrypted files, the original video footage, and a backup satellite link rigged through Null Splice's support. The conference hall was a monument to control, polished glass, minimalist design, and rows of chairs filled with executives who thought they ruled the world. On the stage stood Vincent Dre. "Today," he announced to thunderous applause, "we make history. Vantage will unify predictive systems worldwide. Safer streets, smarter security, limitless foresight. He smiled until the doors opened and Eleanor walked in. The room went still, a single breath held across 200 powerful lungs. Someone whispered, "Is that?" Vincent turned and saw a ghost step into the light. Vincent's mask cracked for only a second, but to Eleanor it was enough. He faltered, stumbled, the way a man does when the floor disappears. "Security!" he barked, but no one moved. Everyone was watching Eleanor. She climbed onto the stage slowly, deliberately. Theo took his position at the console just below the platform, activating the satellite feed. Cameras rolled. The live stream to the global market began with a flicker of light, Null Splice's insignia pulsing at the corner. Eleanor took the mic. "I'm Eleanor Whitmore," she began, "and I'm not dead." A hush fell so complete it felt like the earth itself was listening. "They tried to erase me because I refused to turn Vantage into a weapon, because I said no. They replaced me, manipulated global systems. They staged a murder to silence dissent." She turned to Vincent. "And he led them." Vincent's voice was tight. "She's delusional. This is a fraud. We have doctors, death certificates." Theo tapped a key. Behind Eleanor, the screen exploded to life. The video of the yacht. The push. Her fall. Vincent's face is clear in the frame. No more arguments, only proof. Panic swept the room like a windstorm. Whispers turned to shouts, then to movement. Shareholders backed away from Vincent. Security hesitated, waiting to see which way power would fall. Vincent stepped forward. "This footage was stolen. It's out of context. We're under cyber attack." "Wrong," Eleanor said. "This is transparency for the first time in your career." Theo triggered the data release. Every server node in the building lit up. Files poured into global feeds, Vantage simulations, predictive war games, financial blacklists, and evidence of backroom dealings. The internet exploded with notifications. In Zurich, Tokyo, New York, investors pulled out. Stocks plunged in real time. Vincent lunged for Eleanor. Theo was faster. He stepped in, catching the CEO's wrist mid-strike and twisting it sharply. Vincent howled. Security finally moved in, this time to restrain him. Eleanor looked down at him. "You built a future without me. Now you get to live in it." The press burst into the room. Cameras everywhere. Null Splice's leak reached every corner of the globe. The coup was over. Vantage exposed, and Eleanor very much alive. Chaos enveloped Ravencliff Island like a tidal wave. Shareholders fled the conference hall, their wealth dissolving by the minute. Security teams scrambled to figure out whom to protect. Media crews jostled for position, their live streams beaming Eleanor's resurrection to a stunned world. But it wasn't over. Theo knew it. He swept the room, scanning for patterns. Movement that didn't belong. Someone watching too closely. A threat still waiting in the wings. At the center of it all, Eleanor remained calm. She stepped forward as Vincent was dragged away, still sputtering legal threats. "You're finished, Vincent," she said. "You always thought the system would protect you. But it was the people who built the system you forgot to fear." He spat back. "Do you think this changes anything? Another figurehead will rise. You can't kill a machine." "No," she said, turning to the crowd. "But I can take away its mask." She nodded to Theo. He reached into the briefcase and withdrew the final drive. A neural interface module Katya had helped decrypt. It wasn't just evidence, it was the soul of Vantage, the kernel code, raw, unsanitized, unfiltered. He connected it to the uplink panel on stage. A new window appeared across all feeds. Upload complete, truth locked in the chain. The blockchain deployment was initiated. Null Splice had arranged it so that the data couldn't be silenced, edited, or hidden. Every classified action the board had taken, every concealed projection, every war-for-profit scheme, now preserved forever in a decentralized ledger broadcast worldwide. Within minutes, journalists from around the globe were calling it the Vantage Dump, a leak bigger than anything since Snowden. Politicians distanced themselves. World governments scrambled for comment. Whistleblowers stepped forward. Every lie the system had told was now laid bare. Eleanor stepped back from the podium, exhaling like she had held her breath for months. Theo stood beside her. "It's done," she said softly. "Almost," Theo replied. She turned to him, puzzled. That's when Theo's eyes caught the glint. High up, a second-level balcony, a figure with a rifle, not aiming at the crowd, but directly at Eleanor. He moved without thinking. "Get down!" He tackled her just as the shot rang out. Screams erupted. The bullet shattered the podium behind them. Eleanor hit the floor, shielded by Theo's body, blood on the tiles. Theo groaned. The gunman was tackled a second later by security, too late. Eleanor cradled Theo's head in her arms. "No, no, no, Theo, stay with me." His eyes fluttered open. "You think I'd let you finish this alone?" And then he smiled. Theo was rushed from the summit hall on a stretcher, blood soaking through his shirt, but conscious, barely. The bullet had torn through his shoulder, clean enough to miss vital organs, but messy enough to leave a trail that made Eleanor's stomach twist. As the emergency crew carried him to the evac boat, he looked up at her through the chaos. "You better not let this all get twisted again," he muttered. "I won't," she said, gripping his hand tightly. "You bought the truth. I'll make sure it stands." They locked eyes for a final moment before he disappeared into the shadows of the dock. Back inside the summit hall, the aftermath unfolded like a slow implosion. The assassin, caught and pinned under heavy restraints, wasn't military, he was corporate. A private contractor linked to one of the board's top executives. The man refused to speak, but his employer's name was already buzzing through the wire. Cyrus Beckman, chief counsel to Whitmore Systems. Marla, still streaming from the Null Splice channel, confirmed it in real time. "Direct corporate hit," she reported. "Ordered minutes before Eleanor took the stage. Looks like someone really didn't want their god queen standing upright again." By nightfall, the global fallout had begun. In New York, Whitmore Systems stock was halted. In London, parliamentary oversight committees launched criminal investigations. In Brussels, the event Vantage had predicted, the staged terror attack, was preemptively exposed by the leaked algorithm. Emergency response units shut it down before it could begin. Lives were saved. All thanks to the algorithm's own data turned against its creators. And in San Francisco, where the Whitmore Systems headquarters stood like a glass monolith, protesters gathered by the thousands. Screens across the city lit up with Eleanor's speech. Her face, her proof. The resurrection no one had expected, and now no one could ignore. Inside the company's boardroom, chaos ruled. The false Eleanor, trained mimic, voice-coached actress, was quietly detained by authorities. Her NDA shredded, her contract exposed. She was just the beginning. Vincent Dre, handcuffed and stripped of his title, watched as federal agents walked in to seize hard drives, arrest colleagues, and seize the very empire he had tried to inherit through silence and blood. He laughed, a slow, bitter chuckle that echoed through the boardroom like a curse. "She didn't win," he whispered. "She survived," the agent replied. "That's more than you can say." Meanwhile, on a private airlift to a secure hospital, Eleanor sat beside Theo as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Machines beeped around them. His bandages were clean, his breathing even, but his eyes only fluttered now and then. She held his hand tightly, whispering, "You didn't run this time. You stayed." His lips curved faintly, barely audible. "I always stay. For the truth." She smiled through tears. "Then sleep. You've earned it." Outside the window, the world was waking up, not to silence, but to noise that meant something, to questions, to revolt, to accountability. Eleanor stared out at the clouds as they parted over the horizon. Everything she had feared had already happened, and she was still standing. The hospital room was quiet, but not in the way Eleanor had grown used to. This was the kind of silence that echoed, the sterile hum of machines, the low rhythm of a heart monitor, the absence of urgency. Theo lay in the bed, hooked to IVs, a thin band of gauze wrapped across his shoulder and upper chest. The doctors said he'd recover, but he hadn't spoken since the surgery. Eleanor sat by his bedside every day. Sometimes she read headlines aloud. The fall of Whitmore Systems, the cascade of resignations, the growing movement of whistleblowers across the tech world. Other times she sat in silence, just listening to him breathe. She'd won. The world believed her. Vincent was in custody, facing charges for attempted murder, conspiracy, and corporate espionage. Vantage had been disbanded by international order, its data networks disassembled. But none of it felt like a victory, because Theo was still trapped in the in-between. One morning, while the sky outside bloomed in soft orange, Eleanor placed a small box on his bedside table. Inside was the medal he'd once kept hidden in his cabin, a Navy commendation for an operation no one talked about. She had it cleaned, polished, framed. "For what you gave back," she whispered. Later that day, while she sat tracing the etched letters of his name on the medal's frame, Theo stirred. His fingers twitched, then a breath, deeper than the ones before. His eyelids fluttered. She leaned closer. "Theo?" His eyes opened slowly, blurry but aware. "Still here," he rasped. She let out a breathless laugh. "You scared the hell out of me." "You're not easy to get rid of," he murmured. Eleanor smiled through tears. "Neither are you." He tried to sit up, but winced. "Did it work?" "All of it," she said. "They know. They see everything now. Vantage is finished." Theo nodded weakly. "Good, because I'm done saving billionaires from the sea." She laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in weeks. Then her expression turned quiet. "Why'd you come back for me, after everything?" Theo's eyes softened. "Because you didn't just want to survive. You wanted to make it mean something." He squeezed her hand. And because I finally found someone who didn't run from the truth. That night, while Theo slept peacefully, Eleanor typed her resignation letter. She wouldn't return to Whitmore Systems. She wouldn't rebuild what was already broken. Instead, she'd launch something new, open source, decentralized, ethical AI, a platform built on transparency and global cooperation. No board, no secrets, no war. She didn't need her old empire. She had her voice back, and it was louder than ever. The sun over the bay had returned to its familiar rhythm, rising quietly, falling without fanfare, never judging what the days held in between. It had been 6 weeks since Ravencliff. 6 weeks since Eleanor turned from a myth into a movement. Her face was still on headlines, but the frenzy had quieted. The world had digested the truth, at least the parts it could understand, and begun to move forward. Governments launched ethics reviews. AI firms restructured or collapsed. The shadow markets dried up for now. People protested, donated, and debated, and Eleanor disappeared. Not entirely. She'd issued a single public address from a nondescript room, announcing her intent to step away, not just from Whitmore Systems, but from corporate power altogether. The future isn't owned by corporations or code. It belongs to people willing to speak up. So that's what I'm doing, leaving space for voices who were never allowed in the room. She declined interviews, deleted social media, and left. Now she stood once again on the familiar stretch of coastline near Theo's rebuilt cabin. He wasn't expecting her. She knocked once, lightly. Theo opened the door with a small smile. "I thought you'd be halfway across the world by now." "I was," she said. "Then I realized I still owed someone a goodbye." The cabin had been rebuilt in the exact footprint of the one that burned. Same cedar walls, same creaky floorboards, same worn fishing gear stacked in the corner. But the light was different now. Softer. Eleanor stepped inside and breathed in the scent of salt and old wood. "Looks just like it used to." Theo shrugged. Didn't want to change too much. Not all change is good. She smiled faintly. Some of it is. They shared a quiet moment. No cameras, no microphones, just two people who had been pulled together by chance and forged by circumstance. Theo poured coffee, fresh, hot, unremarkable. "You came for closure?" he asked. She nodded. "And to say thank you. You could have walked away 100 times. You didn't." "You gave me something to fight for," he said, "and you reminded me why I used to fight in the first place." She looked down, then back up. "I'm not staying, but I wanted to leave this." She reached into her coat and handed him a sealed envelope. Inside, a deed, a donation, and a simple note, to rebuild more than cabins. Theo blinked. "This is a grant, a foundation for veterans, for whistleblowers, for anyone who needs a place to start over." He nodded slowly. "You're still saving people." She smiled. "Maybe now I'm just helping them save themselves." As the sun dipped lower, Eleanor stood on the edge of the dock, looking out at the sea that had nearly swallowed her, that had in many ways delivered her. Theo joined her, hands in his pockets. "You sure you don't want to stay?" She shook her head. "I don't belong to this world, not anymore." "You could." "Maybe one day," she said, "but not yet." They watched the waves for a long time, just the hush of the tide, the distant cry of gulls, the weight of everything unspoken. Then she turned and walked away. No fanfare, no final embrace, just a quiet goodbye. Years passed. The world didn't stop turning. New technologies rose from the ashes of vantage, this time with tighter laws, louder activists, and deeper scrutiny. Eleanor's name still appeared in textbooks and documentaries, sometimes spoken with reverence, sometimes with controversy. But no one really knew where she'd gone. Some said she moved to Iceland. Others claimed she now consulted for grassroots ethics panels in Southeast Asia. A few conspiracy blogs insisted she had disappeared into a remote Himalayan village to meditate in silence. Theo never confirmed any of it. He still fished, still lived in the rebuilt cabin, still carved his daughter's name into driftwood on quiet days, the sea always his most faithful witness. Until one morning on a mild summer day, he heard footsteps on the dock. He looked up. A little girl stood there, no older than 7. She had dark hair, bare feet, a curious stare. She held a letter in her small hand. Theo stood slowly. "Can I help you?" he asked. She nodded and handed him the envelope. Inside was a photograph. Eleanor, standing beside the girl, smiling. Behind them, a modest community center, his foundation, now built halfway across the world. Scrawled on the back in faded ink, "Her name is Elle. I thought you should meet her." Theo smiled. Not wide, just enough. He reached for a second fishing rod and handed it to the girl. "Have you ever fished before?" he asked. She shook her head. "That's all right," he said. "The sea remembers everything, even the first time." They cast their lines together as the tide rolled in, silent and infinite, and the past, like the ocean, settled gently around them, never gone, never forgotten, just home.